By the end of this video, you are going to have a raw web page built by you and styled by you, not a template, a page you wrote yourself from an empty file. This is a complete beginner tutorial to HTML and CSS. No prior experience needed. Hello, my name is Mohamed Sela, and this channel covers everything for beginners getting into web development and tech in general. And this tutorial is one of the most fundamental videos we have made so far. If you are new here, kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel. We publish guides like this every single week. Now, before we touch any code, I want to spend some minutes explaining the concept between HTML and CSS that will actually make sense to you. Every website ever built is made up of two core languages, HTML and CSS. HTML, which means Hypertext Markup Language, is responsible for structure. It defines what's on your page, the headings, the paragraph, the images, the links, and so on and so forth. HTML tells the browser what kind of content exists and what it means. For instance, a heading tag tells the browser this is a heading. A paragraph tag, on the other hand, tells this is a body. An anchor tag says this is a link. CSS, which means cascading style sheet, on the other hand, is responsible for presentation and how the website looks and feels. It defines how those elements look, the blue color of the heading, the font used in the spacing between sections, the width of the page, all of that is CSS. CSS doesn't touch the content. It references the HTML element and tells the browser how to display them. Here's a mental breakdown that actually makes sense. Think of HTML as a blueprint of a building which specifies the rooms, the walls, and the structure. CSS is the interior design, the colors, the material, and the visual finish. The industry standard is to intentionally keep these two files separate from each other. Changing how a building looks should not require rebuilding the whole wall. In the same way, you should be able to completely redesign a web page visual outlook without touching a single line of content. This is why they live in separate files. Before we write any line of code, we need to set up our environment. You need two things, a code editor and a web browser. For the code editor, I recommend Visual Studio Code or VS Code. It is free, it runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and it is what most professional developers use. Download it at code.visualstudio.com. Once you're done installing that, you need to add the extension Live Server. It lets you see your project in the browser as and when you're making changes to it. You'll find it by clicking the extension icon on the left sidebar and searching Live Server. For the browser, anything between Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge will work fine. Chrome developer tools are particularly powerful for beginners, and we will be using them later on in this tutorial. Join me as we build our first website. Alright, so in this tutorial, we're going to build a simple personal website using two files, HTML and then CSS. So we first have to create our folder and have these two files in there to start right away. So anywhere on your PC, in your location, you can create a new folder. So my first website, and then right click and open that folder in VS Code that you downloaded earlier on and installed. So this is basically what you're going to be having as your outlook for VS Code. And then right away you have your folder here. Like I said, there is your extension before you install the live server. So under your folder that we created, my first website, we create two files. First file we name index.html, and then the style sheet style.css. Now in the index file as HTML, there are some kind of foundation that we have to set up. It's a line of codes or codes that appear on every HTML file, and to get that in VS Code, tap the exclamation mark 1, enter, it creates that for you. I'm going to go through this and what each line of code means. So doc type HTML simply tells the browser or any other application having access to your file that this is an HTML file document and it needs to treat it as such. The second one, HTML lang English, is just telling the browsers that this website or this file is written in English. And we have your head tag, the body, and then the end HTML tag. Let me increase the text of this. So we have the head. So anything that's going to appear in the head over here is not going to visually be seen in your website, with the exception of this title here, document. Let's change that to my first website. So the title appears at across the browser itself. So the meta character ensures that special characters and symbols are displayed correctly. The meta name viewpoint allows for the website to be displayed properly on different devices, tablets, laptops, and mobile phones, and so on and so forth. The only thing we'll be adding here is a link, something to tell the HTML file that you're going to pick your styling from this file. So you need to link the HTML and the CSS file. We're going to do that by using the tag link rel equals the style sheet, and then the name of the file href, and our name that our style sheet is style.css, and then we close the tag. So what this line of code means is that pick your styling from this file style.css. Now if you go at the bottom right, it says go live. That's the live server that we installed. That's going to come up, and so we can see exactly what we are doing. So like I said, so basically at this moment we have nothing on in our body section, so nothing is going to appear within the website itself. The only thing appearing is my first website, like at the top here, which is the title of the document. Right. So now in our body, we are going to create 3 different sections. We're going to create a header, a main, and then a footer. Now these, we're creating this to actually inform the browser that the header is basically like the heading, and whatever we put in our main is going to be like the actual content of our website, and the footer is going to be at the bottom, at the very end of our file. So we're going to create a 3. So header, we have our main, and then footer. Now for each of these, we're going to have an h1, some paragraph, and then so on and so forth. So in our header, we're going to have h1 file. So inside the h1 is like a top level header. So we have h1 all the way to h6. h1 is bigger than h2, h2 bigger than h3, all the way to h6. So it's like h1 is the header, h2 subheader, h3 subheader, go on and so forth. So as it increases, the size reduces. So we're going to have let's say our name, Mohammed Seller, as a main header, and then a paragraph B tag, which will, let's say, welcome to my first website. I am a graphic designer and web developer. Yeah, so we can just end there for now. Just something simple. So I'm going to go through this and explain certain things, and then when I'm done, I'm going to build a very beautiful website running through. You can pause, copy the code, or you visit our website to actually see the actual code and copy and really understand how it works. Now in our main section, we are going to create two sections. One is going to be about me, and then the other one is going to be like a list of skills that I have. So we're going to have H2 about me, and then a paragraph listing some types of description about what I do. So that's basically it. And then under skills, we're going to have my skills and then list. So my skills is going to be H2 as well. Then UL over here is going to be unordered list. Unordered, so we have UL and OL. UL is unordered list, OL is ordered list. Ordered list is going to number the items you're going to be list. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. UL is going to be pointers, or just pointers instead of numbering them. And then for each list that you're going to list, you're going to put them in an LI tag, which is list item. So my skills, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, graphic design, and so on and so forth. And right at the bottom, we have our header, which is going to be a paragraph, the art, copy, and then colon at the end. So these are special characters. There are certain words. So it's an HTML entity. It's a special code that renders the copyright symbol, right? So since we don't have the copyright symbol on our keyboard, HTML has certain codes for certain words or symbols, as you say. So when we save this and then head back to our website, you realize that now we have a simple HTML, no styling, nothing, our name, simple introduction about me, further introduction, my skills, the unordered list, and then the footer. Very simple and straightforward. Now, what we're going to go back is now add some styling to this. So what we're going to do is now open our style sheet and start to add some elements to this. So we're going to start with HTML. So in HTML, we have what we call tags. So all these are tags: opening tag, closing tag. In style, what we have is properties. So we're going to pick every tag here and try to style it. So first, the whole HTML, that's opening and closing, we're going to give a property of font size 100%. And then the next, we're going to style our body. So we want font family. So we're choosing what text to use for this. Let's say Georgia. If that is not available, the next will be Times New Roman. And if that is not available, any serif font will do. So what's basically telling the browser that if you have a Georgia file, open this file, a Georgia font, open this HTML in Georgia. If you don't have, rely on Times New Roman. If you don't have any serif font, will do. Now the next is maximum width. You want to make sure that our content is the same all throughout, from bottom to the top, not one having a longer paragraph and the next one having a very short heading. So we're going to stabilize this and then give it, let's say, 720 pixels, and then we have a margin. Now before I add a margin, let's save this and see our output at the moment. So you realize that instead of the whole paragraph going all the way to the end, it ends over here and then comes down. So from here to here is our 720 pixels. So everything is going to be within that size frame. Now to center, so the maximum width is to keep the content from not stretching all the way across the screen, and then to center the whole thing in the website. So if you are in the desktop, it's going to be centered. If it's mobile, it's going to be centered, no matter the spacing at both ends. And you do that by adding a margin of 0 auto across. So this, like a CSS trick, setting both left and right margins to auto, which centers the whole document. So let's save it and then see our perfect. We have everything centered. So anytime you need a document or image, something centered, you use this. We're going to add a padding of 2 pixels and 1 pixel at the top and at the bottom, and then a margin. We already have a margin. Let's add a background color. Let's sort of give it a bit of an off-white. Now coloring in CSS, you add your colors with hex code, so the hashtag sign and then the hex code of the color. So off-white will be some, I think, F9, F7, F7. So hex code is 7 letters, or 7 letters and numbers combined. So we have our background color. Let's pick black so you see the actual effect. Black is 6 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this 0, we open our file, the whole thing is black. So what we are telling is everything in our body section, that is from header, main, footer, everything should be in black, but we don't want black since we still want the website to be visible to whoever is visiting. So off-white, F9, F9. Yeah, so this is kind of an off-white color. And then in terms of text, we have a color of, let's say, 2C, not too dark, 2C, 2A, a bit dark, and then line height, the spacing between each line, let's say 1.7. So this basically, in our Word document, we have spacing 1.51. So that's basically telling you just for consistency throughout the whole document. So now we're going to head over to and continue our editing. And let's give some property to our header, curly brackets, and then to separate the the header from the main in the section, we're going to bring a border after the header. So bottom border, we're going to have 2 pixels thick and then a solid with the same dark shade we have, that's 2C, 2C, 2A. So this is going to create a line between our header and then our section. We're going to create one at the footer as well, but that's going to be at the bottom border top. So it's going to appear before the footer, just to have some separation between the sections. And then we can add padding, bottom 1.5 rem. Now let me explain the difference between padding and margin. So padding is a space inside the element. Margin is a space outside the element in relation to other elements. So if you have the an element here, the spacing it has within itself is what we refer to as padding. The spacing between itself and the next element is what we call margin. So in some circumstances, you would like to use padding just to give the element, the tag, a breathing room for itself. And then in certain situations, you want to give some spacing between one element and the other. And that's when you use margin. So padding bottom, at the bottom, you should have every element in the header, you should have a 1.5 rem spacing. Now rem simply means root em, and em now you realize that we're using rem units throughout. Rem simply stands for root m, which is is relative to the base font size. So at the beginning we've set a font size of 100%. So the padding at the bottom should be 1.5 in relation to that 100%. So if we set our font size to be, let's say, 20% or 1000 pixels in total, anytime you use rem, it means 1.5%, 1.5 off the base size you set in the beginning. So padding bottom, let's add a margin as well. I want to put some spacing between each element here. So let's say 2 rem for that. As you practice, you get to understand how these files or these properties actually work and when to use them. Let's add some styling to our h1. So every h1, so header h1. So every h1 in our header will have these properties: font size of 2 rem, and then margin bottom as well for, let's say, 0.25 rem. So outside of the header having margin bottom of 2 across board, the h1 element, the h1 tags are also going to have an increase of 0.25, just to give it some breathing space, since it's the header and needs to catch the attention of the viewer. Now let's head over to h2 and style that as well. We have font size, let's give that to 1.25, a little below our h1 size. We can leave it to the normal one, that is h1 is the normal sizing, but you want to give a specific size so that it cuts across the website and not just any browser representing your h1 however it wants. So font size of 1.25, and then Let's add a margin here as well, margin bottom of 0.5 as well, and then color. Now for this H2 we want to give it a different color. Since it's not going to be very big like the H1, it's still going to be smaller than H1 but has a color so that it stands as well, it stands out as well. So let's use some shade of blue, 185 FA5. So colon and then blue. Now in VS Code, I think you can just type in the color as well, but we don't want this deep color. We want some shade of light blue. So I think that would do for the H2. Let's see our progress so far. Yes, so border, spacing, about, and text. So these are the H2 elements which have picked up the light blue properties. Now we're going to go and style our unordered lists. We have a padding left of 1.2 rem. That's the whole unordered list. And then for every list item, we're going to have margin bottom, the difference, the spacing between each of them, let's say 0.4 or let's say 0.5, any spacing will do. And then we head to our footer. Like I said earlier, we want to have some spacing between each of these elements. Yeah, so we're going to have a border that separates the body from the main from the footer as well. So we're going to have margin border top. We don't want it thick as this 2 pixels, let's say 1 pixel solid line, and then a bit of a grayish color, D1C7. Yeah, and then margin top. So for this, everything is going to be at the bottom, so we want the spacing to take effect at the top. So the space before the element, the space before the element. So margin top of 3 rem, and then padding top as well. So we're going to spacing for the element itself, and then the element and other, the spacing between the footer element and other elements as well. You can 1 rem for that, something very light and small. And font size, this is a footer, so it has to be a very small size. It's not going to be in your faces, so 0.875 rem in any size, any small size that we wish. And then the color of the text itself should be the same here with the border. So copy, paste. Yeah, so now when we save this, we have a footer here which is light, the border also light gray, the text, and so on and so forth. So that's basically it. Great, you now have a working, styled, and published website that is real. This is something to be proud of, but it is just the starting point, not the finish line. Let me tell you what comes next and in what order. First thing we're going to be learning after understanding HTML and CSS is CSS layout with Flexbox and Grid. What we built today uses simple top to bottom block layout. Flexbox with CSS Grid unlocks multi-column design, navigation bars, and card grids, the layout patterns you see on every modern website. Second thing is JavaScript basics. HTML and CSS produces what we call static content. JavaScript adds interactivity that includes but not limited to responding to clicks, updating content without a full page reload, connecting your page to external data, and so on and so forth. It is the third language in the front-end stack that is a natural progression once you are done with CSS and CSS layouts. The next or the third thing is responsive design. Your page should look nice and correct on phones, tablets, and desktops. CSS media queries and mobile-first design extend what you have built into something that works on any device. The fourth thing to learn in your progression is what we call Git and version control. As your project grows, tracking changes and being able to roll back mistakes becomes very essential. Learning the basics of Git and GitHub, even if it's just committing and pushing, is a habit that will serve you for your entire career. Let me leave you with this. What you built in this tutorial is not just any tool, it is a real web page structured with semantic HTML and valid CSS running in your browser. The same two languages behind every website ever visited, regardless of how complex those websites may appear. The gap between this tutorial and a professional front-end role is real, but every professional started exactly where you are right now. What matters is consistent practice and deliberate project work. The full written version of everything we covered today is linked in the description. If this helped you in any way, kindly subscribe to our channel and stay tuned as we drop useful tech insights every single week. Hit like if you want more people to see this video, and most importantly, drop a comment when you successfully build your first web page.